Well, good evening all, and welcome to council. This is the 24th meeting of the 143rd Council of the Corporation of the City of St. Thomas. It was nice to see just a little bit of rain today. And welcome all. And first, for the members, any disclosures of interest? Seeing none, minutes.
I have motion that the minutes of the meeting held on June the 5th, 2023 be confirmed. Moved by Councillor Herbert, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
Council will now resolve itself into committee of the whole to deal with the following business. First committee this evening is strategic direction and development. First item relates to strategic planning RFP award. I have a motion that report ADM 1623 relating to the strategic planning RFP award be received for information, and further that the proposed process for updating of the city's strategic plan be approved, and further that a service contract for supporting the update of the strategic plan be awarded to Climb Consulting in the amount of $42,200 plus applicable taxes. Moved by Councillor Baldwin Sands, seconded by Councillor Macaulay.
Questions or comments? Councillor Herbert?
Thank you, Worship. I was just curious, we scored 75.6 points out of 100. Is that an acceptable one, or acceptable number? Because there was 3 or 4 groups that applied, so I just curious.
Well, we'll go to the expert.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Councillor. That was the highest score received out of the 6 proponents. So we deemed that as an acceptable score. Yes.
Just a follow-up, would you have preferred higher?
I think it's always appropriate to have higher, but we did choose the
I
proponent.
mean, that's the highest one you
Yeah,
got.
that's the
I'm
highest.
just wondering what the 25% we're missing, that was all, so.
Right. There was 4 of us that looked over the scores and scored them based on our own individual responses. So there always is a variety of opinions in that.
Councillor Clark?
Thank you. Through you to staff, it's just wondering, we budgeted 20,000. I'm just wondering why it's doubled.
Originally, we did budget 20,000. That was at a point in time where we weren't sure if we were going to take the consulting route. We did likely understand that 20,000 wouldn't be enough, just based on typical experiences with consultants. I can say that amount was the second lowest of the 6 proponents, but each of the 6 were above that $20,000 amount.
Further questions or comments? If you don't mind a comment from the chair, this would be the most important strategic plan I think the city's ever done with what's happened in the last year. I don't like the cost of it either, but I think that first of all, finishing off our last strategic plan in a fulsome way, and then starting another strategic plan for the next 4, 8, and 10 years makes good sense that we get the best we can to help us with that. Councillor Baldwin Sands?
Thank you. I truly am looking forward to the council engagement piece that is being offered in this. And really, as you said, with this being a new strategic plan looking forward because of the latest development, I think it behooves all of us to take part very actively in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Seeing that, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? That is carried. Thank you.
Next item relates to urban design guidelines, phase 2, the public and stakeholder workshop. I have a motion that report PD 2323 relating to the phase 1 report for the city's urban design guidelines be received for information. Moved by Councillor Wookey, seconded by Councillor Macaulay.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? That's carried.
Next item relates to proposed zoning bylaw amendment to remove a holding zone symbol. I have a motion that report PD 2423 relating to an amendment to the city's zoning bylaw to remove the holding zone symbol from lands within the Harvest Run Phase 3 Stage 2 subdivision 34T 21501 be received for information, and further that the application by Doug Terry Limited for an amendment to the city zoning bylaw to remove the holding symbol from the lands comprising Harvest Run Phase 3, Stage 2 subdivision be approved, and staff be authorized to prepare an amending bylaw. And further that notice of council's intention to pass an amending bylaw to remove a holding symbol from zoning bylaw 50-88 as amended be given pursuant to Ontario Regulation 545/06. Moved by Councillor Peters, second by Councillor Clark.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item is notice of a public meeting regarding a proposed zoning bylaw amendment to be held on June the 26th. And that's received from the municipality of Central Elgin to permit a rural residential use on the severed parcel and to prohibit construction of a new residential dwelling on the retained parcel at 42431 Ron McNeil Line, which is located west of Highbury Avenue. Unless the members have any items of new business for this committee, we'll now move into community engagement and services. One item of unfinished business remaining on the agenda, no items of new business unless there are any items from the members. Seeing none, we'll move into infrastructure and civic operations. First item relates to light pollution on private properties. The Director of Planning and Building Services will provide a verbal update.
Mr. Pompili?
Thank you, Your Worship, and to through you to all the council. Apologies for the delay in getting this information back to you. It was had lost track of it. But a question was raised about are there any regulations in place to deal with light pollution on residential properties? And there is a clause in our property standards bylaw that I'll just read it here, that an owner shall maintain all exterior lighting, lighting fixtures and light standards in good repair. Then it goes into explaining what good repair means. But it also has a clause in there that that light fixtures need to be located and aligned in such a manner as to prevent a nuisance to occupants of adjoining properties. So our property, and speaking to our property standards officers, they have had to from time to time visit properties and make that assessment if the light is a nuisance on an adjoining property. It's almost always resolved with just a conversation that simply informs the person to direct it down onto their property away from pointing directly into the neighboring property. We also, through our site plan process, if we're dealing with commercial properties, we require photometrics plans to be submitted and reviewed by staff that also just make that determination that all the lighting is contained on the site and not polluting or causing a nuisance on adjoining properties. So there are processes in place to protect that. The best approach is that if a neighbor has an issue or person has an issue, is to put in a call through customer service and we'll have it investigated. And almost always the issues get resolved.
Super. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Peters?
One person's interpretation of a nuisance can differ from another person's interpretation of a nuisance. And if an issue can't get resolved in a neighborly fashion, then who plays light judge and jury as to what is a nuisance and what isn't a nuisance?
Mr. Pompili?
That's a good question. We haven't had to really get to that point. It really comes down to if the lighting is not directed directly into the property, then it shouldn't be causing a nuisance. So if it's directed onto that property, then the property standards official will make that. They will. And they have often, when they've had that sort of conflict, they've brought in other parties to the site to also make that assessment with them.
Yeah, my follow-up to that, Your Worship, would be Lou, with what's in our property standards bylaw, is it strong enough, or should we should we be enhancing it or strengthening what we have?
No, but another good question. I asked that directly to our property standards officer. If she had any cause for concern with the language there and her ability to enforce it. And she to date, she hasn't had any issue with dealing with an enforcement of it.
Well, thanks, Your Worship. I'll just pass on to the individual that has expressed some concern over interpretation, that individual just needs to keep reaching out to customer service. Thank you.
Yeah, and sorry, just to follow up, and I'd be happy to get involved as well too, and I can have some discussions with that person too. I don't have an issue with that.
I may actually, thanks, Your Worship, and thanks, Lou. I will do that. I will copy you into an email. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Herbert?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Lou. If I lived on Talbot Street and the street lights are right above my apartment window, can anything be done?
Through you, Mr.
Please go
Mayor,
ahead.
in my experience, that has happened from time to time, and the streetlights are municipal property. And again, I'm not speaking with the St. Thomas experience, but I would imagine it would be the same. Is city staff had gone out there, and there are shields that they can put on that light that will shield it, provide a shield away from the residential property that's experience a nuisance, but just ensure that it's redirected down. That's probably the only solution available.
It's just kind of a hypothetical question.
Further questions or comments? Councillor Wookie, sorry.
Thank you very much. I believe, if I remember correctly, going back some years, that was one of the benefits of the new street lighting that we have in St. Thomas, not just Talbot Street, is that it's directional. As not, it's direct, it's whether it's the LED or whatever it happens to be. And that was one of the factors that we looked at when we decided to change the type of lighting. So just a reminder for everybody that's hopefully what we're trying to do.
Further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? It's carried.
Your worship, the next verbal update is also from the Director of Planning and Building Services, and it relates to sound barrier fences at the entrance to a subdivision, specifically along Riverbank, and the responsibility of care of such fences.
Mr. Bumpilli, you want to speak first?
I sure can, Your Worship, and through you to all of council. I just did a little bit of big digging on this one in terms of checking what's registered on title, looking at the subdivision agreement. And so the sound barrier fences and entrance fences, this is generally applied across the board for subdivisions that include these features for single family homes when they back onto arterials or collectors or major roads. So sound barrier fences and entrance fences and entrance features, which form part of the sound barrier fence, were installed by the developer in accordance with a noise assessment report that was accepted by the city and a requirement of this particular subdivision development. So the noise barrier fence and the entrance features, they're permanent structures, they're not to be removed, and is to be maintained as originally designed. Now, there are clauses in both that are both registered on title of each lot with the sound barrier fence or that entrance structure. And also clauses that are included in the purchase and sale agreements that advise the purchaser that the city is the owner of the sound barrier fence. The fence and the structures are not to be reconstructed, maintained, repaired, replaced, relocated, altered, or removed by any purchaser, and that the costs of any such works done by the city shall be paid by the purchaser to the city, and subsequently interest charges could be applied as well for late payments. So the fence structures, the sound barrier fences are to be maintained there. They were designed there for a purpose to provide that noise abatement for those single family homes. They're permanent structures. They are the ownership of the city, and any works that are to be done on those fences are to be done by the city, and then the city charges back to those homeowners. And these clauses are on the title of those properties.
Questions or comments? Councillor Peters.
I haven't looked at the one individual who contacted me at his deed. I know what he told me, and that he was told by his realtor, you're responsible for the wooden fence to maintain it, not let anything happen to it. So I'm going to encourage this individual to reach out as well too, if this has to come back to us, because I just think it's like, I'll put on a cemetery hat for a moment. We look after thousands of monuments in a cemetery that have never had perpetual care on them, and it falls back on the cemetery to, unless with family can come along. And I went and walked along Burwell Road, and this fence, the quality of the brick that was used, not just on this one individual's house, but you can start to see scaling. And I just think that this is something that, you know, we're going to have to look at in the longer term. I can remember this coming up when we talked about a harvest run, I think it was, and about allowing a sign up out there. And I just think that this is something very onerous, especially the entranceway signs welcoming you to the street. So just because I've had the good fortune or misfortune of buying a corner lot, now I'm 100% responsible for the upkeep of something that every other person in that subdivision enjoys the benefit of. I wouldn't be happy. So I thank you for the update. I think this is a bigger problem. I think we need to look at this in the longer term. If this is going to be a requirement, we almost need to have a perpetual care fund for these things, and that funds be set aside for potential long-term maintenance. Look forward to hearing from anyone else. Thanks, Your Worship.
Further questions, Councillor Wookie?
Thanks, Your Worship. Yes, I agree with Councilor Peters. This is one of those things that I've thought about before, and we've been in and we've talked to a developer at one point about this. And the developer was saying that this is part of their marketing strategy for the subdivisions, like it has a name, it has an identity. And so I'm like, okay, that's fine, but I don't think that taxpayers should get stuck with, or the homeowners should get stuck with the marketing and advertising for that neighborhood. I'd be very frustrated if I was billed for a reconstruction of a brick pillar, because that's not cheap. So I just like to say that I think some kind of perpetual care fund with the fences and the stonework going forward, I would heartily support that, because I think we're sticking people with, and especially masonry, like that's expensive. That's really expensive. So that's just my comment. Thanks very much.
Further questions or comments? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Worship. We've continued to have a number of new subdivisions. Is that part of the planning? Have we had any requests for these types of entranceways, or is it to kind of passe? Was it a passing fad of, earlier times?
Mr. Bumpus.
In this particular case, on Burwell and
It's
Yes,
Riverbank,
sorry.
backing on to it.
In this particular case, yeah, the noise.
Sorry for clarification. I'm not talking about the noise fence. I'm talking about the entranceways. We have a number of, I've seen it on like one court, and there's two concrete entrances with the name of the street and things like that. So when we've got a number of new subdivisions, if developers been requesting that again?
It is common that developers request a gateway feature, an entrance feature for marketing, for identification. And it is a benefit that everybody enjoys in that subdivision. It just becomes an issue of the location of where that wall gets placed. If it gets placed on private property, on an easement or on a reserve, then who is the ownership of it? In some cases, I'm going by some of my experience in the past, we have done both examples where we've used something like a perpetual reserve fund, so that funds are are there 30 years down the road when those features need to be repaired. Or there's specific clauses that say that once at some point in the future, that feature may be removed by the city and not replaced, so that expectation is there that this is a temporary feature that isn't there in perpetuity. So it is a common ask, and the city's preference is that it's located on private property so that they don't have to maintain the ownership and maintenance of it in the long term.
Councillor Clark?
No, supplementary then, based on our conversation tonight, then going forward do you need any new direction, or is there something, I think from what we're hearing around the table is people don't think it's fair that one neighbor would have to pay the ongoing costs. So I'd like to see, some new language that we make sure that it doesn't happen in the future.
Mr. Pompili, is there any discretionary difference between design work and actual sound barrier? I mean, I get the need for a sound barrier along a busy road, and I don't think that's truly what we're talking about here. It's more those gateway monuments into certain streets. Once that fails, can we just make the decision to take it out? And in many cases, maybe the homeowner would not like us to do that.
No, again, that's a very good question, because that is the case, that sometimes these features, if it's owned and maintained by the city has the right to not replace it when it becomes in disrepair. But then that can create some issues with property owners outside of the main property owner who's at that location.
The one whose lawn it's not on.
Yeah,
Right.
or that the person whose lawn it may be on may like it, but may not like the idea of having to pay for it and maintain it, but they may like it as a feature on their yard. In terms of, blocking
Right.
wind in the wintertime, sound from traffic, things of that nature.
Councillor Herbert?
Thank you, Worship. I agree with Councillor Clark. I think it'd be something for Lou to take a look at and report back to us. Maybe we could tweak it and see if we can work something out for the people who buy that property and get stuck with that.
Through you, Mr. What something that we can do when we bring a subdivision, our next subdivision forward, we can be specific in terms of what some of these features are that may or may not be part of that subdivision that may require this discussion, and we can bring that forward to council on a site by site basis, a subdivision by subdivision
Right.
basis. I don't think there's much we can do for what's existing other than encourage people to, pay attention to what's on title.
It doesn't let us look backwards, but it does let us react forward. Okay. Further questions or comments? So on the report, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Your worship, unless there are any further items from the members under this committee. Oh, sorry, we're actually on unfinished business. We're now on new business. First item, water supply agreement for the Elgin area primary water supply system. I have a motion that report ES 3723 relating to water supply agreement be received for information, and further the council direct that a bylaw be prepared to authorize the execution of the agreement between the Board of Management for the Elgin area primary water supply system and the city of St. Thomas. Moved by Councillor Wookie, seconded by Councillor Herbert.
Questions or comments? Councillor Gibson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not understanding the one paragraph there. I just wanted to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. So under the agreement on page 12, the fourth paragraph, it's saying that the St. Thomas, the London Administration Services would take care of any administrations. Is there a fee to St. Thomas for that in that paragraph? Because it really doesn't define either or nor either way. So I just want a clarification if we're going to be responsible doing a payout to their administration doing the services for us. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll ask Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you. London is the administering authority for the primary water board. And so some of their administration goes through there. So for example, HR or treasury, things like that. There's no direct fees that are paid. Everything is put into the rates. So whatever we pay to buy the water, all the administration is built into that. Okay.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? That's carried.
Next item relates to the South Edgewater Booster Station, license of occupation. I've motioned that report ES 3823 relating to the license of occupation for the South Edgewater Booster Station be received for information, and further the council direct that a bylaw be prepared to authorize the execution of the agreement between the Elgin Area Primary Water Supply System and the City of St. Thomas. I moved by Councillor Wookey, seconded by Councillor McCauley.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? It's carried.
Unless there are any further items from the members under
Councillor
this.
Peters?
Thanks very much, Your Worship. A number of years ago, when you were wearing a different hat, you were successful in seeing a project funded here in St. Thomas, and that was for the extension of the Port Stanley Terminal Railway into the downtown. And ultimately, the goal was to reconnect with London, and that's another issue in dealing with CN. But even as it was, it did not, it stopped probably about 200 feet south of Kane Street.
Yep.
I noted with interest that the ground has really been broken on the tiny homes project.
Yep.
And I know that there was funding available for this, and funding is being held in a reserve. And I'm curious whether there would be the appetite to at least, well, there's going to be construction, and there's already road work started, that at least if we could get this track extended further to the north of Kane Street, we certainly wouldn't want to encroach in any CN's lands. That's another discussion. But if we're going to be making a mess, I'd rather see us make a mess before the tiny homes are built, instead of afterwards. And I'm just asked that perhaps staff could take a look at giving consideration to seeing what it would cost. The rails there, it's all piled on Station Street. I know our Parks Department has to cut around it, but it just seems to me the ideal time to at least let's get that track extended a little bit further.
If I could share, and maybe city manager could help me with this, but it's my understanding that although the money was originally set aside for that connection, it has gone to other projects in the meantime. And we still have the permission to do it should CN allow the connection through the yard. But it's been, as you said, the rail's been saved and some other things have done that will save the project. But I'd like us to hear back whether that is the case, which one of our views is the case. City manager, can we ask for that back?
Certainly, we can certainly get that information back.
I hope you're right. Councillor Peters. Further questions or comments? Seeing none?
We'll now move into corporate governance and administration. First item relates to the Adult Day Program, Client Care Services Coordinator. A motion that report VV 0523 relating to the Adult Day Program, Client Care Services Coordinator be received for information, and further the council authorize the creation of this position in the Adult Day Program. Moved by Councillor Baldwin Sands, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Councillor Baldwin Sands.
Thank you. I would first like to start with a question, and then I have some comments after that.
Super.
To the director, if I could, please.
It's great. We've got Michael here. We don't often. So let's ask him questions while he's here. Go ahead.
Currently, what is the wait time for someone seeking residency in Valley View?
Mr. Carroll?
Thank you. It's a difficult question to answer. We have approximately 454 people on our wait list at Valley View at this particular point in time. So it depends on whether or not you're waiting for a private room, semi-private, or a basic room. Added into that, there are other criteria. If you are deemed to be a crisis admission, then you are kind of bumped up to the top of the list. So it could be anywhere from 3 months to 2 years to get into Valley View, depending on what criteria and what accommodation you are waiting for.
Go ahead.
Thank you. If I'm allowed to continue. As we have in this, identified in this report, that this program has been running since 1998. And since 1998, population has been aging, and it provides recreational exercise program, social outings, dining and bathing for people that are coming in to use the day program. And I think that this helps us very well help people who desire to stay in their home for a longer period of time, as well as that transition piece from transitioning from home into long-term care by becoming part of that program. And that is why I fully support this. But in addition to that, it also provides respite time for caregivers. And that wasn't identified in the report. So with that, I am fully supportive of this program, and I hope my fellow members of council also fully support this program for it to continue in the magnitude that it has been.
Councillor Clark?
Thanks. I'd just like to echo Councillor Baldwin Sand's comments. The program is a very important and very popular program. And again, with the demographics being what they are and the city growing, I'm just wondering through you to staff when we might see an expansion of the program. The day list continues. The need is there. It assists people in staying in their own homes, which relieves some pressure on new beds to this facility. And I'm just wondering what it would take to expand the program.
Mr. Carroll?
Thank you, Your Worship. We do believe that funding for these particular type of programs is certainly on the horizon. I certainly can't give you a timeline at this point in time, but it's certainly kind of the buzz in the sector is that adult day programs are being seen as a very important component of our healthcare system, and that they are going to be, shall we say, revitalized, relooked at, re-energized to offer additional services to our communities. Before the pandemic came upon us, we were working with Ontario Health at the time, I think actually it was the Lynn at the time, to bring RPNs into our program, into the adult day program. And by bringing in RPNs into the program, we will be able to offer additional type of services to the residents of our community. Clients who are more medically unstable could come to our adult day program. But that, shall we say, didn't happen at that particular point in time. But we're hoping programs like that are going to be coming back to us as the pandemic enters a new phase, and that we will be able to offer additional programming through programs like having an RPN on site. But I don't have any definite date for you at this point in time.
Go ahead.
Just as supplementary, I think it's important as we develop our strategic priorities for the next 5 years that we keep this in mind, that I mean, if the money isn't there from the province, it may be something that we want to take a look at as a city. We spend a lot on youth programs and recreation programs. And I know when we looked at the review of the senior center, one of the things that we were starting to look at was, you know, if we were to enhance the adult day program with more spaces, you know, where would we do that? Would we do it at Valley View? Would it be an opportunity because the senior center had more land? So we didn't resolve that. We identified some issues. So I think it needs to be a priority over the next 5 years.
Good plan. Councillor Herbert?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Mr. Carroll. When a resident becomes a person becomes part of Valley View resident, are any of the programs extra charge or is everything free?
Mr. Carroll?
Thank you, Your Worship. There are no extra charges per se. If you're admitted into Valley View, you're admitted in on whatever the fee for that particular type of accommodation you require. You can apply for a rate reduction if your income is such that it can't accommodate that particular rate. But however, the programs are distinct in the sense that if you are a client of the adult day program, you do not participate in the services of Valley View. And if you are a resident of Valley View, you cannot go out and participate in the adult day program. So there is that distinction between them. I think that's done for many reasons, but one reason in particular is that we want to accommodate as many clients and residents as possible. And we want to certainly have as many spaces available for our community members utilizing the adult day program.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? That's carried.
Your worship, unless there are any further items from the members under corporate governance and administration, council will now reconvene into regular session. I have a motion that the recommendations, directions, and actions of council and committee of the whole, as recorded in the minutes of this date, be confirmed, ratified, and adopted. Moved by Councillor Baldwin Sands, seconded by Councillor Macaulay.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
No reports of committees this evening. We'll move into petitions and communications. First item is a letter received requesting a proclamation, flag raising, and jumbo lighting request for Orange Shirt Day. I have motion that Council of the City of St. Thomas proclaim September 30th, 2023 as Orange Shirt Day in the City of St. Thomas, and further that a flag raising ceremony be held on September 30th, 2023, and further that the jumbo monument be lit in orange on September the 30th, 2023 in recognition of Orange Shirt Day. Moved by Councillor Baldwin Sands, seconded by Councillor Peters.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item is request received from Tadine Mulders on Warren Crescent, requesting relief from fees and charges assessed to her for injuring a tree at the front of 28 Warren Crescent. I have motion that the letter received from Ms. Mulders be referred to the Parks, Recreation, and Property Management Department for a report. Moved by Councillor Wookey. Seconded by Councillor Clark.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item is a correspondence addressed to the Minister of Justice and Attorney General for Canada from Lanark County regarding its support of Bill C-321, an act to amend the criminal code. This relates to assaults against healthcare professionals and first responders. The next item is correspondence addressed to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing from the municipality of Trent Hills, requesting amendments to the municipal oath of office. And the final item under petitions is notice received from the Ontario Ministry of Transportation and Stantec Consulting Limited of a preliminary design, detailed design, and class environmental assessment study relating to Highway 4 widening and proposed Talbotville bypass and Highway 3 twinning. Your worship, if there's no further items of petitions from the members, we'll move into unfinished business of council.
Councillor Baldwin Sands.
Thank you. Earlier today, I sent a request into the CAO in regards to an update to a request I made a couple of months ago as to the City of St. Thomas and Truth and Reconciliation Project for 2023. I was wondering if the CAO would be able to provide everyone with the same update.
City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to the members of council. Thank you for the question, Councillor Baldwin Sands. As you know, some of the work that we did last year to acknowledge our work around truth and reconciliation, and specifically with our Indigenous partners, had disappeared as it relates to our sidewalk in front of City Hall. And at this point in time, it will be put back in place. It may not be put back in place before the September 30th date, and certainly not now for National Indigenous History Month. Having said that, we are looking at other activities that we can put in place to ensure that for at least September 30th, and having council now just approved that we will have recognition in place and ensure that there is some sort of walkway with the feathers or something else in that regard. I also spoke, and she was just here in the gallery with Ms. Stark with respect to some activities in the last couple of months and some engagement with the Indigenous communities here within our own community. And we have to follow up with her as well.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Other unfinished business or new business? Councillor Clark?
I noticed recently with the weather changing, a number of tents popping up around the city again. And I'm just wondering if we could get clarification on what the city's stance or philosophy is going to be as we start a new summer season, with camping in municipal spaces.
Thank you. I'll take the start of it, let the city manager help. We have a protocol in place through our staff and through the MOST team and through the police and through I think our Parks Department does a fair bit of work on this too. A protocol as to when an encampment is found or discovered or seen. The report should come through customer service, and that starts the clock on the protocol of first the MOST team going out and speaking to the people who are encamped and talking about different options that they have, but the rest of the protocol follows after that, with it being dismantled if it's on city property. City manager, help me with anything beyond that.
Thank you, Worship. That is the majority of it. I think the important part is that any concerns that any citizen has should be put through customer service. If you have specific questions with relating to the protocol, Ms. Sheridan is on the line as I see her. There she is, like magic, and can certainly respond to give you an overview of the protocol in addition to the information that the mayor has shared.
Good evening. Thank you for the question. Yeah, the protocol, we brought it to council last year. I think it was October. And so everybody would have that report, and I'm happy to send it out again. We do have a really comprehensive response, and I have statistics monthly. Last month, we had 12 customer service requests come in. They were all resolved that was in April. In May, we had 15. And the process is working fairly well. Today, there was a situation that was corrected fairly quickly. But again, as Mayor Preston said, going through the customer service line is the best way to see any action.
Councillor Clark, follow up.
Thanks. So I just want to be clear that it's not just complaint driven, or it shouldn't be. I mean, the tent that we're talking about that was resolved today was resolved quickly, but the tent's been up. That tent was up since Friday. So to me, it's not working. If someone can camp there Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night, right in a parking lot where most city employees are parked, somehow, to have to rely on a citizen to complain about it just doesn't seem right. So I think I just want to make sure that we're adhering to our own protocol and that things can happen quickly so that it doesn't mushroom. Thank you.
Thank you. City manager? No? Okay. You need a little flag or something. Councillor Herbert?
Thank you, Worship. We've had a fire ban in place now for probably 14, 16 days. And I was under the impression if we had a heavy rain, it would be lifted. Is there any update on that with the heavy rain we had, if the fire ban is still in place?
We'll leave that for Chief Gregory to report to us, and we'll put it on our website and our social media should a change occur. That was a pretty good soaking this morning.
Yeah.
However, I don't think we passed the dry stuff yet, but we'll let Chief Gregory tell us. whether
I
the
see
case-
he's on the list if you
No,
want,
he is on the list.
if he's there.
Chief,
you.
would you like to help us?
Thank you, your worship, through you, Counselor Herbert. We met this morning with all the county chiefs. A few of them are waiting to get back to us, but they're from their district chiefs and stuff. So it looks like we probably will make a decision first thing Wednesday morning. I'm in Toronto tomorrow for a safer summit. And then we'll make it a decision for Wednesday morning and keep everybody abreast of what's going on.
Thank you.
Super. Further questions, comments under new business? Seeing none.
Next item under new business, correspondence has been received from the mayor addressed to the Honorable Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, Infrastructure and Communities. That's relating to funding for brownfield remediation. If there's no questions about that, we'll move into bylaws. I have a motion that leave be granted to bring in the bylaws. Moved by Councillor Herbert, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
I have a motion by Councillor Herbert, seconded by Councillor Gibson, that the bylaws be now read a first time, referred to council and committee of the whole, and read a second time.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
First bylaw, please.
First bylaw is a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held on the 12th day of June, 2023.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Second bylaw, please.
Second bylaw is a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute and affix the seal of the corporation to a certain agreement between the city and Tessa Allison Kuipers. This relates to a residential loan under the Community Improvement Program for the file at 4 Scott Street.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Third bylaw, please.
Third bylaw is a bylaw to appoint a chief building official, building inspector, bylaw officer, and noise control officer, being Angelo DeSico.
Questions or comments from members? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Fourth bylaw, please.
Fourth bylaw is a bylaw to appoint a deputy chief building official, building inspector, bylaw officer, and noise control officer, being Pamela Hasty.
Questions or comments from members? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Fifth bylaw, please.
Fifth bylaw is a bylaw to delegate council's powers to grant permits for alteration permits in a heritage conservation district.
Questions or comments from members? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Sixth and final bylaw, please.
Sixth bylaw is a bylaw to establish salaries and benefits for certain non-union employees of the city of St. Thomas.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Your worship, I rise to report successful passing of 6 bylaws.
Great work.
I have a motion by Councillor Herbert, seconded by Councillor Gibson, that the report of council and committee of the whole on the 6 bylaws be received and adopted. The same be read a third time, engrossed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed and numbered.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? That's carried.
Next order of business is public notice. We have an additional item under public notice. Notice is hereby provided that administration intends to add a walk-in rate for artificial turf field rentals to bylaw 188-2002, being a bylaw to impose fees or charges with respect to recreation services matters at the June 19th, 2023 council meeting. No notices of motion this evening. There is a need to move into closed session. I have a motion that this meeting be closed to deal with a matter of a position plan procedure criteria or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality, and one personal matter about an identifiable individual. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll remind the folks at home and those in our gallery today, we're about to go into closed session. So that's it for our meeting today. We will come out of closed session simply to adjourn our meeting or pass anything that is accomplished in closed session and won't return back to a public meeting today, except just for that reason to adjourn. So all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.